Begin with the war in Gaza and Israel's reaction to President Biden's warning on the supply of U.S. weapons to its ally. Mr. Biden has said America will continue to give Israel the weapons it needs to defend itself. But he added Israel won't keep Washington's support if it carries out military operations in heavily populated areas. Israel's UN envoy has called Mr. Biden's remarks disappointing. More on that in a moment. But first, here's more of what President Biden said.
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently.
Well, for more on that, our North America correspondent Will Vernon sent this update from Washington.
President Biden said America would continue to give Israel the weapons it needs to defend itself. But, he said, the US wouldn't supply heavy weapons, bombs, artillery shells that could be used in a major assault on the city of Rafah. And Mr. Biden said it is these US-supplied weapons that have already killed civilians in Gaza. And human rights groups say these munitions are responsible for the utter devastation in Gaza. Now, earlier we heard from US officials who confirmed that one shipment of heavy bombs was delayed last week and the other shipments were under review. And that was a hugely significant announcement, a historic step.
Gaming.
Not for 40 years has
Thank you for the 5 give the subs.
the US held up any arms deliveries to Israel for this kind of reason. The Israeli government said that it was very disappointed. Now, the US, of course,
Haaretz reported that Israel will hand over the Rafah crossing to a private American corporation once the operation is over. Meanwhile, Egypt said that it'll halt all truck shipments until Israel gives it a date for when it'll leave the crossing. Yeah. I guess Jeremy Scahill's breaking reporting on that was 100% solid. Now that Haaretz is also confirming it.
is Israel's biggest supplier of military equipment, its most important ally. And Mr. Biden has already come under criticism from Republicans in Congress, for example, who say he is abandoning a key US ally. But I think...
Abandoning. Damn, dude. I can't believe they pulled back a little bit to be like, hey, how about you fucking stop routinely shitting all over our fucking hegemony here and remember who the daddy is, okay? We told you, like, 35,000 killed is enough. You need to fucking halt the genocide, okay? You can't just, like, blow up every part of Gaza. Like, you need to let people live in one part of Gaza. What the fuck are you doing? And Israel's like, what the fuck? I can't believe it. Biden is Hamas. Biden is Hamas.
Mr. Biden is hoping that by making this move, there have been many months of expressions of deep concern from President Biden, from other officials too, about the conduct of the war in Gaza, about the plans for Rafah. Those warnings have been more or less ignored by the Israelis, who said they're going to go into Rafah regardless. So I think Mr. Biden is hoping that this will send a clear message, sufficiently clear, to the Israelis that they must change course.
Will Vernon there. Well, let's speak to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell, who is in Jerusalem for us. Yolande, good to have you. Now, you and I regularly talk about this growing rift between the US and Israel. It's become much more public now, hasn't it? What's the latest we've heard?
Well, this is being covered extensively in the Israeli media, as you would expect. There haven't been many comments yet from Israeli officials, although we did have Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, speaking to public radio. He said that these comments by President Biden were extremely disappointing and they would give hope to Israel's enemies.
Who are you, bro? Who the fuck are you? Even if you don't give a shit about, like, the slaughter of tens of thousands of Muslims, okay? Even if you don't give a shit about any of that, like, the sheer arrogance. That's why I always say, like, Israel is a unique is a unique case that like damn near every American would understandably be able to get mad at. Like there's a different argument that you can make for every different group of people. You got the America first dumb fucks. You could be like, what do you mean America first? Why is this like unimaginable amount of money going to Israel? How is that America first? But ultimately, even for people who don't fucking think about this stuff critically and only simply see it as like pure emotion, the idea, like the entitlement that you see from Israel, like Israeli envoys, and the arrogance, the sheer arrogance and display every fucking day should piss you off. Like, it's perfectly normal to be like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Bitch, you know who the daddy is in the situation? We are, not you.
We've also had the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, coming out and really criticizing what he says is Israel's government's management of the country and the relationship with the US. It's a source of great concern among many Israelis that the relationship is becoming so strained. Of course, Washington is the closest ally of Israel. It provides a diplomatic shield for it, as well as this huge amounts of military assistance. So it's not exactly clear about how this is going to affect things happening on the ground in Rafah. I mean, from what we know, there has been more heavy shelling, the Israeli military continuing to carry out what it says are targeted raids against Hamas. But people living in Rafah, not just the areas that have been given evacuation orders, tell us that it is terrifying, that panic has set in among people, and they really just don't know where to go for their own safety.
And Yolande, what has Israel said, Benjamin Netanyahu said, about why Israel would move forward with such a large-scale offensive despite opposition from its own allies?
Well, the reason that Israel really wants to go into Rafah with a full-scale invasion is because it says that there are 4 Hamas battalions remaining there. It's really the last stronghold of Hamas in Gaza, in Israel's eyes. And it doesn't believe that it can achieve the victory that it has said is only achievable by dismantling Hamas in Gaza unless it goes into this southernmost city.
Yeah. It's just like, guys, the same exact shit that we have said every single time, we're still saying, although almost all of the other instances, every single other instance where we said this has been proven to be a lie, but it doesn't matter. This time it's real, I promise. Please listen to us. Please listen to us this time. I promise it's true this time. Come on. Just give us a little bit more. Give us a little bit more time.
Now, of course, the problem with that, which we're starting to see already, is that you have so many displaced people in the city that a full-scale invasion there, indeed any kind of increased military action, really does involve huge amounts of human suffering. We're getting reports of people in the past day of civilians having been killed in the airstrikes that have been going on. But even bigger than that is the fact you now have this sort of downward spiral in the humanitarian situation because aid is blocked from going in through the Rafah crossing, which Israel took control of early on Tuesday. That's not been open to humanitarian groups since. And also, although Israel said yesterday that it was opening the Kerem Shalom crossing after 4 days of closure, it said caused by Hamas rocket fire, which killed 4.
Yeah, why are they? By the way, that was bullshit too. They were fucking. They blew up a fucking tent with Israeli soldiers in it. They didn't fucking blow up the actual crossing, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure they just like they literally fucking murked a bunch of IDF soldiers. Meanwhile, they're like, oh yeah, well there you go, punishment for all. Yeah, they fucking literally blew up an army base that was set up, like an impromptu army base that was set up. Get the fuck out of here, dude. But yeah, when Israel gets mad at something, they don't just like try to fucking find a normal solution to the problem. They just punish the entirety of the Palestinian population. Many of them, the overwhelming majority of them at this point, women and children, by the way.
4 Israeli soldiers nearby. And there's so much fighting going on in that area, and Palestinian workers fled with the start of the Israeli military operation, that really means that no aid is able to get in there in effect either.
And Yolande, as this rift becomes public, there are also domestic pressures on each of these leaders in the US and Israel. What pressures is Benjamin Netanyahu facing domestically right now?
Women and children is kind of weird too. People think men can't be civilians. The reason why I say predominantly women and children is because, one, there's a lot of psychos out there who don't see Palestinian men as anything but terrorists. But two, it's also because Israel doesn't see Palestinian men as anything but terrorists and enemy combatants. So they've already fucking arrested all of them and are torturing them in a fucking military base right now as we speak. So the remainder of the population is mostly women, children, and the elderly, if not all of them at this point. It's also an argument that, unfortunately, no matter how fucking bloodthirsty one may be in their unlimited defense for Zionism, can't contend with. Because every single person understands, like when you say women, children, and the elderly, every single person understands that, you know? They just can't. It's not a thing that you can justify unless you're like a rabid psychopath, a rabid, bloodthirsty psychopath, which many are, but that's still good because then you allow them to hang themselves their own rope, basically. You're giving them just enough rope to just demonstrate how fucking bloodthirsty they are in opposition to that sentiment. Debunking the recent Israeli propaganda, the picture shows 2 circles in yellow and red. The yellow is the actual Kerem Abu Salem crossing. The red is the military Kerem Abu Salem military post. The recent attack by Palestinian resistance was not at the Kerem crossing. The targeted site is the Kerem Shalom military site, not the Kerem Shalom crossing. The military site is more than 2 kilometers away from the crossing. Yeah. They didn't fucking strike the crossing. They struck the military base that they had set up and killed a bunch of fucking Israeli occupying force soldiers, which, by the way, tough titties. Okay, so Israel is, of course, seeking to punish them. Not Hamas, mind you, not the resistance, mind you, but the entirety of the Palestinian population.
I mean, he has 2 pressures, really. I mean, you have on the one hand the hostage families who have so much public support in Israel. They're carrying out near daily demonstrations. They say Rafah can wait, bring the hostages home. They can't wait. And then you have those far-right members of the coalition government that Mr. Netanyahu heads, who have been saying specifically that Rafah must be prioritized, a full invasion there. That's the only route to bring Israel the victory that they want. And they have threatened, if Israel signs up to a reckless deal in their eyes, with the ceasefire talks still going on in Cairo, that they would walk away from his government.
Yolande, thank you for that update. Now, as Yolande was saying, the humanitarian situation on the ground is already dire, and it is getting worse. An investigation by BBC Verify has found over half of Gaza's water and sanitation facilities have been damaged or destroyed since the start of the war. Here's Caroline Hawley.
Water in Gaza is in dangerously short supply, posing serious health risks to the population. BBC Verify has analysed more than 600 water and sanitation facilities. Here, the dots represent a mixture of water wells, tanks, desalination and sewage treatment plants. The red dots are all those that have been destroyed or damaged. That's more than 300 facilities across the Gaza Strip. Now, Gaza used to have 6 functioning wastewater treatment plants, which are crucial to preventing the build-up of sewage and the spread of disease. This was one of them. Here it was before October the 7th, and now after. 3 others are also damaged or destroyed, and we've been told the remaining 2 are out of action, largely because of a lack of fuel. Now, to compound the problem, officials in Gaza say they're struggling to repair damaged infrastructure after an attack on a key warehouse where fuel and spare parts were stored. This shows the warehouse before and after it was struck at the end of January. The IDF said it was targeting Hamas fighters nearby. It's accused the group of storing weapons and ammunition inside civilian structures, including in and near water facilities. All of this has had a very direct human consequence. The World Health Organization says that the average person needs 15 litres of water each day for drinking, washing and cooking. but most people in Gaza are getting just a fraction of that.